Welcome to the Human Factors and Ergonomics Hub, a series of educational podcasts that showcase the connection between human capabilities and good work design, brought to you by the Human Factors and Ergonomics Society of Australia. My special guest today is Barry Kirby, the current president of the Chartered Institute of Ergonomists and Human Factors in the UK. He is a Chartered Ergonomist and Human Factors practitioner, a Chartered Engineer and Fellow with the Institute of Ergonomics and Human Factors, and a member of the Institute of Engineering and Technology. He has over 17 years' experience working as a human factors consultant in user engagement, product design and simulation, and he says that he's enthusiastic about developing great results for users. I caught up with Barry recently over a Zoom chat to discuss his work. So Barry, thank you so much for joining us on the HFE podcast today, and it would be great if you could tell our listeners who you are, what you do and where you work.
Yeah, so my name is Barry Kirby. I'm the managing director of a small but perfectly formed consultancy called C.ErgHF, based here in the UK, in South Wales in the UK. I'm a human factors practitioner, just like probably most people listening. I've been running my own consultancy now for about, 12 years. And prior to that, I've been in larger businesses or larger industry, practicing human factors, I guess. And then alongside that, I'm this year's president with the Chartered Institute of Ergonomics and Human Factors.
Excellent. How did you become interested in HFE?
I guess, like a lot of people, I stumbled upon it. I don't know about you, but I sort of find that very few people seem to go straight into human factors. They always find it in a different way. And I'm kind of no different. I started off life in the military, and then left kind of early on with that. And then went into industry. I went to work in aerospace to begin with. And I joined aerospace. I got my degree in command and control systems, command and control engineering. And really, that gave me a lot of advanced programming skills, systems engineering skills, and that type of thing. I hadn't really heard of human factors before. In fact, I didn't hear about human factors then either. The closest I got to it was doing or what they termed then a GUI design module, and so got to learn some of the Windows style guide as it was then. I think we were in Windows 3.1.1 or whatever it was at the time, and so that was kind of the closest I got to it. But it was really interesting because at that point I was like, I kind of like this stuff. I like I'm not artistic in any sort of way, but I really enjoyed being able to put a good interface together, and so that I guess was an early indication for me. But then after I got my degree, I left the army and went to work in industry. I joined Smiths Aerospace as part of the cockpit research group as a software engineer. And so the idea was that I would go in and help them do stuff. I didn't really know much about what it was all about. And it was at that point that I started to play with, touch screens were just starting to come into the fore then. They weren't as popular as they are now. And so we ended up designing like new overhead panels using touchscreens for aircraft and rotorcraft. And it was at that point that I realized that I really enjoyed the design and development of interfaces. And I was part of this human factors team, or this cockpit group with human factors practitioners in it. And I was like, this is cool. I really enjoy doing this. And in the 2 years that I worked there, I think I developed maybe 1 or 2 bits of code, and that's it. The rest of the time, I just dived headlong into this human factors stuff, getting to design, running projects, built, and I also got into sort of synthetic training and other simulation pieces. I was lucky enough to design my own cockpit simulator, which was, looking back on it, was an absolutely massive privilege and opportunity to do so. It's not something you get to do every day, and certainly now because it's way more expensive, but it was just a really cool thing to do. And so I sort of spent 2 years there. And then that's when I was like, actually, I want to do this human factor stuff and I want to do it properly as a thing. And so the next company I joined moved to BAE Systems. as part of their Advanced Technology Centre, and joined the Human Factors Department there. So that was, I guess, the first time that I was badged as a human factors scientist, as I was. And so that was really, again, that was a different change of pace, because I was working on a lot more military stuff, acted more as I guess a consultant as well around the wider BAE business. And that was just fun. I got to play with aircraft, a lot more sort of synthetic training pieces, and then, but also getting to do some, I guess, the more the leading edge blue sky research elements as well. And so really looking at the human performance side of things. So yeah, that was just really good fun. And I spent 8 years there, really, I guess, cultivating what do I enjoy, what do I not enjoy, and doing more, just getting stuck in and doing stuff. And then came a point where I was sort of got to a thing of, well, actually, could I run my own business doing this? Could I possibly dare step out of the comfort and the warm security blanket that a large organisation offers you and go it alone? And that was 12 years ago, basically last week. And it was prompted by an opportunity that came up where a couple of companies were wanting me to go and do some work for them. And I was like, actually, I could do this. And I had a really short period of time to make a decision, because I sort of, looking back, I think if I didn't have such a short period of time to make a decision, I'm not entirely sure I would have jumped. I might have bottled it over Christmas, but we went for it, and it was possibly one of the best decisions I've ever made, because like I said, we managed to keep going for 12 years and doing fun research work, doing actual hands-on. And for me, the beauty is picking up the work that you really, really want to do. Because if some requirements come across the table, you're like, actually, I don't think we're going to be as motivated into that. Therefore, I don't really fancy doing it. You're not going to be as motivated. You're not going to give it your all. So we get to pick and choose a lot of the work that we do, and I think that really shows in the output. So yeah, I think it's not a roller coaster of a career, but certainly it's not what I ended up or what I anticipated doing when I first left university. But I wouldn't change it for the world.
What an incredible way to start. I mean, aerospace to start with. I mean, here in Australia, that would almost be a dream.
Yeah, I've been, again, it was massively lucky. I should have realised early on in my career. So I joined the army, and that was always because I grew up in a really small town. And it was kind of one of these things that you sit there and you look at it and go, I need to get out of this town. And the army was the way to do it. However, in hindsight, I should have realised when, like, my favourite film was Top Gun, and I really liked anything to do with aeroplanes and things like that. I could have maybe joined a different service. So when I got the interview to go with Smiths Aerospace at the time, it was just brilliant. I got... because not only do I love aircraft, rotorcraft in particular, any sort of helicopter thing is just like, wow, that's amazing. And I got to work on a couple of really good projects that way. But also to look at that future thinking stuff at the time, to look at how we develop, because I got a real freedom to play with just cool tech. So we got to do early software-based voice recognition, and I got left alone to test all of this stuff with different accents and things like that, and which we sort of take for granted now, which you use with your personal assistant and your home speakers and things. Whereas then it can understand an American accent and a UK accent and an Australian accent without changing any software. That's crazy. And we just got to play with it, and you still had to train them then as well. So it was. You look back at it and you think, "Wow, yes, no, I had some huge privilege," and I was, just massively lucky to land the sort of roles that I was interested in, and just kept my imagination and my motivation going.
So you've lasted 12 years. Tell me about some of the projects that you've worked on or are working on.
So a lot of it's evolved as we've gone. So this year there's four projects that I would sort of highlight as biggies. So currently I'm seconded into our Ministry of Defence, looking at what we call the Skynet program, which is our next generation satellite communications system. And this is the first role that I've done that's been around not doing the work but assuring the work. So I'm helping look after it from an MOD side. So when the suppliers come in doing their stuff, it's doing that piece around, are they doing what needs to be done to the right standard, on time, and to the right quality? And that's a really fascinating one for me. It's been a real new way of looking at it, because normally I'm on the other side, making sure that we try to deliver to the right standard. So to have that insight from this perspective, and being the only human factors person working on the program, it's really interesting to see how we can use human factors to leverage through the program to highlight where we can add value. But it's also it's a lot more pressure than I thought it was going to be. I guess maybe I had this idyllic view of, I'm the customer, therefore I can sit there and go and just order people around and that type of thing. And it's far from it. It's thoroughly enjoyable. It's brilliant fun. But the opportunity there to try and eke every little bit out of making sure that we're promoting human factors in the right way and getting the value out of it just makes you think in a different way, which has been a lot of fun. And it's been one of my ambitions for a long time to work in the space domain, which is why when this role came up, I jumped on it, because I've been lucky enough to work in pretty much all of the domains so far: land, maritime, air, cyber. And so when this came up, I was like, yes, let's jump at it. But it also shows you, it's been a real eye opener that actually there's very little human factors that goes on in the space sector. With the exception of, NASA and the big organizations like that. Some of the ones that are the next tier down, I would say, there's very little human factors that goes on. So the work I'm doing is around satellites, and really we sort of think, well, actually, the satellites are manned by their very nature. So why do we need to bother about human factors? But you've got all of the control stations that need design developed. You've got all of the training, the logistics. Basically, when you look at across all the human factors integration domains, there is a lot of value that we can add. But for me, it's that piece. The difficulty is making sure that we articulate that value in order, because at the end of the day, the government is paying for this stuff to be done, and we need to show that it's actually providing real input and it's truly useful. It's not just a box ticking exercise. So that's taken up a good chunk of my time at the moment. It's really interesting to see how you manage human factors on this side, not only from, I guess, one project perspective, but actually there's 7 or 8 different projects going on at the same time, and looking for linkages, looking for exploitation routes, and looking for how you can get people to work together better. It's just really, really good fun. So that's sort of one half of what we do. And then another one that we've picked up, which I guess kind of encapsulates the other side of what I like to do, is the Skynet stuff is, I would say, largely desk oriented. The ability to actually go to to space or anything like that is zero because of its very nature. This other one was a really early concept project called GapX, and the idea was that it's my client wanted to develop a project on how you cross gaps on the battlefield. So there can be like short gaps of around 4 meters, which can be quite a real stopper for if you're in armored vehicles and things like that. So he's developed this concept that's quickly deployable and can be used by tanks or vehicle or Land Rovers or even people. So, but it's almost it's not quite a throwaway item, but it's certainly one that is to be deployed and left. So he reached out to me and said, if we could help with reviewing the design as it develops in its early stages, but then also when it comes to prototyping, could we go and run some evaluations when they run some usability trials? And that was fun. So it involved invariably digging a big hole in the field and getting wet and muddy and trying to record all of this stuff going on. And so it was an opportunity to take the few members of the team out and go and have a look at it. And we had 2 days out there where we were pulling this stuff together and just watching them deploy this, the solution that they've developed, and being able to evaluate that from a user perspective, a safety perspective, and a longevity perspective as well. So being able to highlight, because there's some very fast moving parts with this solution, and it's trying to make sure that yes, we keep the spirit of what my customer wanted to keep, but also trying to make it as safe as possible. But then also looking at the true usability side of it, because the military domain is quite special and I think unique in what it does. And so we were trying to say, well, the way that we would use it in the civilian world, in industry, everything would be nicely, you'd have it all marked up, you'd have it all the right hazard tape and hazard markings around it. Well, you can't necessarily do it the same way, because in the military world, you want to be tactical and maybe not, things to be hidden and things like that. So trying to bring in that user perspective was just good fun, but it was a good opportunity to just get wet and muddy in a field somewhere and just have a bit of a laugh. But also, because this was being done at such an early phase of the project, because it was even what you got, it was just an idea. It was just forming as we were developing it. For me, it showed the real value of the human factors input, because I guess a lot of the projects I get involved with, I tend to call it, we go human factors firefighting, because you get brought in halfway through when you either realise they haven't got it and they need it, or something's already gone wrong and they need it fixed. So this was a real opportunity to do that really rare thing of going in right at the beginning and say, right, well, actually, if we do this, you'll save time and effort later on, and you'll keep it safe all the way through. Almost to the point that it was so early. I was when I first worked with this customer, I was like, what do we actually do? I've never had a project that does it this early on. What tools can we deploy? And so it's been a real experience in that respect as well, of being able, almost learning how to do the job properly for the first time. Probably shouldn't admit that too much, but it is that bit of the brilliance of being able to have a true case study of the value of employing human factors right at the beginning. In fact, almost you could say before the beginning. So yeah, no, it's really good fun. So I guess that gives you the two ends of the type of work I've been, and that we've been working on this year. And then what we intersperse that with is, I guess, that the human science research piece as well. So we do take projects from largely from MOD around what are we doing in 20 years' time? What are we doing in 40 years' time? Around things like, so we've been doing work around people analytics and the power of people analytics, the tools that can be used and how that can help the wider organization, understanding how human senses are used has been a key one, and the application of artificial intelligence into command and control. So that's largely what we like to get involved with in that piece, is across all the future research, is how do humans integrate with technology? What is that? What is the amazing thing that happens between that human technology interface that allows it to meld together and actually provide value, and not just be a gadget for the sake of a gadget? So yeah, I think that covers the span of the things that we like to get involved in.
Now, there's some diversity in there, and obviously I don't work in this space, so there's some things that I probably don't understand, hence my next question. Tell me about some of the tools and methods that you would use if you're looking at how human senses make a difference.
This is one of the cool things I like, because when we get involved with a lot of it, then the tools and the methods can't necessarily be that complex. because the way we've got to apply them, we tend to fall back to, I guess, the basics. So when I was talking about like the GapX project, we'd love to do some like really in-depth trials and this, that, and the other. But when you're stuck in the middle of a muddy field, then you've got to adapt with what you've got. And just because you're part of that trial, you're not the only thing going on. Therefore, we know that the client wants to get on and make sure that his project works properly, not just because Barry says you've got to do things in a certain way. So we tend to fall back on quite simplistic things. I mean, the some things around the senses is that's really some basic experimentation that's going on about working out what the how fallible the senses are. So actually, we're just working that up at the moment for some experimentation next year. So that will be all based in a lab environment, which is going to be rare for me because it's going to be quite, it's going to be like properly done, which is going to be fab. A lot of these other things are done. Like I said, kind of fitting them in as and when we can using what's available. So when we think about, basic workload measures, when situational awareness measures, the usability testing, we kind of fall back on our tried and tested stuff that we know that we're comfortable with and can do it, but then adapting it for each individual use. And the slightly nerdy part of me quite likes being able to take a basic method, such as like NASA TLX, it almost doesn't matter what it is, but actually then documenting how you've changed it, how you've used it, and how you've changed it. So that means when we get another project like that, the ability to reuse it in a way that makes us be able to pick it up quicker is something that I find quite therapeutic in a way. It's for me, it's the not only the tools we use, but how we employ them that is key, without getting bogged down too much in exactly which ones they are.
Tell me about the AI in command and control. Are you developing the AI or using some? AI
in command and control was in fact, it's still an ongoing project around understanding about how AI could be used in decision making. So command and control is all about making sure, really fundamentally, is about making sure that you've got the right thing going to the right place to do whatever it is at the right time. It's allowing that flow of decision making and basically being able to make sure that we can make decisions quickly and accurately. The way that I guess the military has been doing command and control has been largely the same, very process paper driven for quite a long time. And even though you might have some software systems, it largely still falls back to a standard way of doing things that has been tried and tested, and they know they can do things in a methodical manner. The real thing around adding AI is to see if you can speed up that cycle and see if we can bring in a lot of that information, because the battlefield now is completely saturated in information, or certainly data, coming from all sorts of different sources. Some of it can be from sensors, some of it can be from satellite sensors, some of it can come from the battlefield. So the battlefield systems provide their own data and information, but they can also come in from voice reports and people's reporting back from when they've seen things, and voice comms and things like that. So that's a broad array of all these things. And really, the commanders who are trying to make decisions now struggle from data overload. So which is the right data, which is pertinent, which is timely, which is just gone stale? What can they rely on? And sometimes, in fact, I would say quite a lot of the time, there is so much information that you can do. We have that paralysis by analysis, that there is just so much out there that you spend your whole time going, what do I need to rely on here? So the use of AI in this field is now being tested and reviewed to sort of see, well, how can it be best utilised? How can it be best utilised in understanding the information that's coming in and sorting out the wheat from the chaff, or the stuff that is important, but also in planning aspects. So if we want to move from point A to point B, if we're doing that in a car, it's relatively quickly. We just throw up our mapping tool. With a military manoeuvre where you've got to coordinate maybe 7 or 8 pieces of heavy armor and understand the threat of what's going on, to be able to have the logistics of the fuel, to be able to move to make sure that you're thinking about where the threat is coming from, and what your fallback action would be if you got attacked, etc., etc. It suddenly becomes a massive order of magnitude bigger. So what we would do from a human factors perspective is they're looking and playing with a number of these different tools that come together into this whole piece, and assessing just how good they are and how usable they are. Because it almost, with any technology insertion project, people get very excited about the technology, which quite rightly so. I'm a massive technology geek myself, and I love picking up new bits of gadgets and saying, wow, what can we do with this? But then you sort of say, well, actually, what can you do with this? And is it usable? Does it fit in with what we do? What needs to change if we're going to maximize the use out of it? Because the military is, I certainly find, a place that likes to take technology when and where it can, but will always fall back to pen and paper or the tried and trusted methods. So you've got to be able to prove that if you're going to bring in a new system like this, that it will work. It can't just work 50% of the time and we'll take 50% of the benefit. It has to work all of the time, or it'll get put back in a box and not used. You've got to be able to prove that it's reliable in terms of the output that it gives you, and that the interface that you have works in a way that is going to give you meaningful output quickly. You can't be a techie when you're using it. Anybody's got to be able to use it and be able to get that output. So we spent a fair bit of time assessing the system that they were currently using for deployment, and coming up with, I guess, proposals and suggestions on how they could improve it and make it more effective in the longer term.
I imagine that there's heaps of challenges in these projects. Do you want to discuss some of the challenges that you've had?
I think they all have, I would say, 2 or 3 threads in common. One is time. The ability to go and do, you always want to get down to the nitty gritty of what it is that you're studying, what it is that you're assessing, what it is you're reviewing. And sometimes you just never get enough time to do what it is that you want to do. So the art of tailoring your approach can be a huge challenge, because you feel like you're taking quite a large risk at the beginning of, right, we're not going to do X, Y, and Z because either we don't have the time, it's too late, or whatever the issue is. And you do sort of sit there and go, am I going to miss something? Am I going to play? Is something going to come out of that I'm not going to get? But I think that comes with almost experience and confidence, but also having some great people around you who you can bounce these things off and say, we think we shouldn't be doing X, Y, and Z. Do you think that's the right thing to do? And generally, yeah, you might miss something, but actually still, as long as you can get the majority of what it is that you need done, then you're still going to come up with some insights that were not there beforehand. So yeah, I guess that timing and tailoring is possibly a big challenge. Then the other one is people. It's having the right people to help you do what it is that you need to do, but also having the buy-in to do what it is that you want to do. I find that human factors is one of these things that when things have gone wrong, and I think this goes back to the firefighting comment, that we spent a lot of time doing the firefighting piece because people have then found out that they needed to have some human factors stuff, and could we please do it to solve whatever problem has arisen. If we could do it properly and sell it better earlier on, well, then problems wouldn't arise. So that means we'd have done a really effective job much earlier on, and money would have been saved, and possibly it would be a lot safer. but you're having to sell that every time. And if you've got a customer that is bought into what you're doing, brilliant, that's absolutely fab. But if they're not, you'll spend a lot of time convincing them as much as you do anywhere else. So you're almost always playing this political game, but with a small p. This trying to sell the discipline and the value of it all of the time, both internally and externally, which I think can be quite challenging. But it's also part of the fun, because when you do get successes, you can then go and show off about them quite a lot, and you almost get that I've got something I can use to go and then sell on, which I think is really good.
I guess when you start out on these projects, there's a certain time that you've put aside to undertake this testing. How often do you have to extend that and repeat the testing until you get it right? That's
an interesting question. It's a good one, because sometimes it depends how much scope you've got to do it. Because certainly, so I would take the CapEx one as a good example, that we had no time to extend. You had a fixed period that we only had the field, the equipment, and the people in the right place for 2 days. And if you didn't get your analysis done, if you didn't record or what you need to record, you weren't getting a second bite of that cherry. It just, for various reasons, it just wasn't feasible. So it kind of, the discussion, the planning almost goes the other way to, right, we've got these users for a limited period of time. How do we make the most of them users or of the system or whatever it is? How do we make sure that we can try and get some of this information in a way that we just don't lose anything? And so one of the things that we've been doing this year is building up our trials kit, which is now involves more cameras and microphones and things like that. And we've even started looking into the use of drones for this type of thing as well, to almost cover the entire place with camera footage from every single angle, and people roving around with it as well, just to capture the event as much as we possibly can, which means that stuff that you might not have seen at the time, you could still go back and look at. And this year, I think when we did this outdoor trial, that was a really good success for what we did, because there was a few things that came up that normally you would turn around and say, right, could we just rerun that scenario, because we found something, we want to look at it. We just weren't able to do that. So we were able to use this remote stuff and this video stuff to go back and look and do them observations. I think the cost and quality of equipment now for doing video recording and sound recording is so much better, and it's so much cheaper that we can do that sort of stuff in a way that I don't think we've been able to before. Because you can throw maybe £100 at small GoPro-esque cameras, and you can get a lot of them and just deploy them. And if one gets broken, actually, now it's not a massive deal. It's not ideal, but it's not like having a really expensive camera to do this sort of stuff. So on the whole, we tend to get quite time limited with people. So we now really, the challenge is maximizing that input. We'd all love to go a lot further and work out how to apply sensory measurement to people in a way that would be unobtrusive, but would actually be cheap and cheerful to do. So is there easy ways of getting heart rate measurement, blood pressure and things like that, almost on every trial you run, to be able to gather that data almost in an opportunistic way. But I think that's next year's challenge, and we'll see how that goes.
I just wanted to bring you back to the value of human factors. You were discussing how important it is to show the value of human factors. Yeah. I just wondered if we could talk in that space for a bit about how you do that, or things that you've done that are extremely effective, or if you had the chance to do it again, you'd do something different.
Yeah, so for me, showing the value of human factors is really important, and you've got to be able to show it not only to your client or who the end customer is, but I think it's really important to show to everybody in the team or the organization that you're doing it in as well, because invariably, I think we find as human factors practitioners that we're either working in isolation, you're there as a consultant, bought into a team, or you might be working as part of a small team. But I've even had it when I've worked as a part of a larger department, that you're still one part of a larger business, a larger organization. And a lot of people do look at what we do, I think, when they first hear of it as soft, human, fluffy stuff, which, and when you're talking with software, hardware engineers, they want to get on and beat metal and write code. So you've always got a challenge right until you get to the point that some of them go, oh, you actually helped make it better, or you've made it more efficient, or oh, I see now how we can make a better product out of that. And I'd love to sort of say that I've got a magic wand that I wave and everything suddenly becomes brilliant. But almost every project I've worked on, you do go through that whole, you become part of the team, and becoming part of the team can be a challenge in itself. How do you get a human factors person in on a project? In defence, in aerospace, in oil and gas, in nuclear, it's mandated. You have to have some of this stuff. But in the grand scheme of things, they still don't necessarily bring you in for all of what you should be. You'll get a little foothold. And for me, it's about identifying early wins. So if you can get in and sort of say, well, actually, if you could let me do X, Y, Z, it like be involved in maybe the part of the leadership team, or be part of the project review team, or be part of somewhere where you get a bit of exposure, then you'll hopefully start developing relationships and start doing that whole, again, it's that, I guess, the whole promotional piece about saying, well, actually, in this space, human factors can do this. And it might be about better team liaison. It might be pulling together the right sort of people. But then when you get into things like design and development and things like that, it's about going in with the right attitude as well. I've seen quite a few teams reject human factors because we've had practitioners go in telling people how they should be doing their job better. And that's never going to work, because the people who are doing that job are probably the best at doing their job. That's brilliant. But what we've got to try and do is bring our perspective to it. And so I try to take more of a coaching type approach, you'd say, of bringing in and say, well, actually, from my perspective, if we could do this would make our lives better, and talk it through with them and work with them on a teaming basis rather than a dictatorial basis. So it brings it that they've developed this solution rather than me, and that works. I find that works quite well particularly when I'm working in larger engineering projects. That if you can bring everybody along with you, and then what works is getting the user alongside you, because if you can get them in and on board to see the outputs of what it is that we've done, and to say that actually this is really good, it works well, then you start getting into that reward cycle where people are getting good feedback from the user community. That's something that they really, really want to use. So then the engineering teams want more of that, and so they're more willing to bring you on board. But that is a very much, I find the onus is always on us as human factors practitioners to keep selling what we're doing, to keep pushing what we're doing, and to do more of the legwork, I guess. I mean, I guess I tend to describe human factors as being really good because we are the glue that brings a lot of project teams together, because we are the ones who can flit around between the project team and the engineers and the other stakeholders within it to try and bring everybody together rather than many people working in silos. I think that's where Agile as well sort of fits into what we do quite a lot without us realizing it. So a lot of people so Agile is obviously the buzzword of the day when it comes to project management. But it's always been kind of the way that human factors practitioners have worked, because we've always brought the user in alongside what we do. That's not a new thing for us, and the ability to work in a more dynamic way is not that new to us either. So when the whole new buzz terms around agile work and evolutionary working came about, then that's that's for us, I think, has given us a bit of a head start because we can embrace it quite quickly. But yeah, overall, for me, I don't think there's any magic wands to this. It's all just about talking and communication and making sure that we're bringing our people along for the ride and doing it in a way that is, I guess engaging in that way, is not just demanding change, but bringing people along for the ride.
So, in your role as president of the CIEHF, I just wonder what some of the biggest challenges in HFE are for you in the UK at the moment.
So I think we've got three main challenges, in fact, probably two main challenges that I think are really, really important. First, these numbers of human factors practitioners, we just don't have enough of them. There is jobs out there. I keep on doing searches on LinkedIn and the internet, and there's over 500-600 jobs out there vacant, waiting to be filled for human factors practitioners, and that hasn't changed much, I think, since April this year when I first started looking at the numbers. And for me, this is a really big problem because, in theory, that's great for anybody who's a chartered practitioner because we can go and get any job we want. Fantastic. That's brilliant for individuals, but we just don't have enough people to fill the roles. And for me, the risk there is that if we don't fill the roles, these projects are going to go on regardless. They're not just going to stop because they can't get an HF practitioner. They're going to come up with a justification about why they don't need one. And if they do that once, and they get away with it, and the project works, and projects will deliver. They just probably won't be as efficient or as safe as we'd like. And if they do that once, then actually what's to stop them then doing it again, and then saying, actually, we don't need any of that HF stuff. And so we will then go into a managed decline. And this isn't actually a UK problem. This is a worldwide problem. Some of the numbers that we've got talking to different organisations is that very few organisations are going up in numbers. Most of them are going down one way or another, either slowly or some of our other organisations around the world have seen a very steep decline. And that's either because people don't see the value in HF or joining professional HF organisations. And that means that we're doing something wrong somewhere. So for me, this is the biggest challenge. And this is linked to, I think, again, promotion and education. In the UK, we don't have any first degree human factors courses anymore. There's no graduate human factors courses. So, and we don't talk about human factors really at a school level. So we have sort of the primary school and secondary school education system. And so when you're 11, 12, going up to 16, you won't come across human factors at all. You won't know. I mean, you want to be, I don't know, a nurse, a doctor, a firefighter, an airline pilot, a astronaut. You want all these cool things. Nobody wants to be an ergonomist. Nobody wants to be a human factors practitioner. And that's a real problem. So, because if you can't see it, how are you going to be it? So, in the same way that I did, I think a lot of people find their route into they stumble across it. So at some point, they'll have done their first degree already, and they will go. However they find it, they will find that this human factors thing, that's really cool. And then you're already talking at quite almost a relatively senior person at that point. So to try and get these early numbers in is really, really hard. And we need to be doing a lot more work to try and get different educational routes to get early exposure to human factors and ergonomics. Firstly, at a degree level, but we need to be pushing much further back or much earlier on into the education system to get people excited about what sort of a cool career that this is. And then the third bit is about how we I guess, how do we support other routes, other disciplines and things like that? Because I think we can get a bit precious about what it means to be a human factors practitioner, and quite rightly so to a certain extent. We're all very proud of the qualifications that we get, the professional qualifications that we get, but because we are such a discipline that brings together so many other disciplines, that we've got this thing like with UX at the moment. I think because UX is, I think, very fashionable. It's, for want of a better word, quite sexy. That you can make the way that you develop product with it is quite cool. And really, for me, UX is part of the human factors toolkit. It should be it's part of the family. Other people have slightly different views, that it's adjacent. But whatever it is, we should be working together because we largely use the same tools and techniques, and really, well, largely we want the same outcomes. But yet we can, as a human factors domain, I think we can be a bit precious about, well, this is human factors and you're, say, UX, or pick another discipline, you're over there. We need to make sure that we ring fence what we do. And I think that can be quite damaging for us, and we need to be more embracing and welcoming more people who might not have the full breadth of the qualifications that a pure human factors practitioner might have. But we can maybe reach out into finding ways of working together and bringing more people in. So in that way, hopefully we then spread the word better and do that. But I think there's a lot of people who've worked very hard to get where they're at and feel quite strongly about, no, ring fencing is kind of the wrong word, but that's what we're doing in effect, about doing that. So that is definitely a challenge at the moment, and we're quite bringing all these three together. We're lucky, I think, that in the UK we haven't declined in numbers. Or when you look at the headline figures, we've kind of stayed around the same for the past few years. So when you consider the pandemic and things like that, on the face of it, that's a good story. But we've had people leave and we've had people join. So actually, it's not as good as you think. You could say we remain the same. I could also describe it as stagnant, because we haven't grown. And again, I guess it's all about how you position it. So I want to really dig into why are people leaving so early on and stop them from doing that, but also try and work with everybody to grow what we do so much more. And then the final bit of that, I guess, is then if we get it right here in the UK, we're not going to do that on our own. We need to, I think my biggest worry at the moment is about how we deal with human factors globally, because I think we need to have better working together around the world, because we are a small team in the grand scheme of things. And we've got organisations out there that perhaps we need to encourage to focus in the right way about, taking these stark numbers of declining HF practitioners and helping address that and trying to share best practice around all of us as organisations and working together. And how we do that, I don't know yet, but we just need to keep talking.
Actually, that's a really good segue, because in Australia, we have found that talking about what we do seems to keep our membership constant, hence the podcast that we're doing at the moment. I'm just wondering whether you've noted an increase in membership or an increase in interest in the society with the podcast that you've been running.
What I've quite liked is we do get more interest. It's the way I run my podcast is around engaging, so trying to share best practice within the industry and engaging people outside of it. And yes, it has been getting more exposure that way. Could I say that it leads to any greater membership? Possibly, but you're talking single, maybe double digits. I wouldn't say, I'd love to be able to say, yes, people listen to my podcast and therefore we've got millions of people joining. It's amazing. Unfortunately, it's just not like that. Maybe next year. But I think it is more around one of the stories I do like, I've had a couple of people who've listened to specific subjects. So I did one, must have been 2 years ago now, on sleep, and fatigue and things like that. And people who are not in the discipline, in fact, might not be involved in engineering and design, have really picked up on it, because that's something that happens to us all. I've also engaged with government ministers and recorded discussions around them about their decision making, their attitude to technology. And so, whilst for us, yes, how we deal with technology and how that decision making happens is, some good human factors stuff. Actually, people see that in their everyday lives, and so it's things like that where we've raised the exposure of human factors has been probably more powerful than hard membership numbers as such. So yeah, I would say maybe a strong maybe around whether it's encouraged more people to come and actually join us. But I do think there is. I've now got evidence over the past few years of doing what I've been doing that more people are engaging with it because they realise that there's pathways in.
What's next for you?
When I saw this on your notes, this is a question that I fear most. I don't know, if I'm honest. I've never been career driven. I've never had that, right, I'm going to go and achieve this in like 5 years, or, the 5-year plan is just not a thing that works. I tried doing 5-year plans and then realized I get 6 months into it and it will completely change, which is maybe the value in it. At least I know that it changes. There's things I want to have a go at. So like I said, early on, one of my ambitions has been to work in the space sector. And yes, I'm doing that at the moment with Skynet to a certain extent. But I've got a couple of challenges that I really want to hit with that I've sort of found doing this work around developing standards. And so developing standards is something I've contributed to before, but never really engaged in too much. So I've got, over the next 12 or 18 months, I've set myself a small challenge around that, because I can see a space where we need some of these standards. So I want to have a go at driving some of that. Something I kicked off a couple of years ago is this idea, or I didn't kick it off, there's been lots of work done in the space, but trying to bring together this idea about how we utilise human factors in the climate change disaster that we're driving into. So how do we try and take some of the human factors tools and techniques that we've got and some of the good work that has been going on out there and bring it together in a way that is actionable, that develops tools that people can actually use? Because, as I said, there's been a lot of good people do some really, really good work, but unless we can actually do stuff with it, then almost what's the point, given the timescales that we're looking at? And so that's something that we're trying to work with at the moment. And so I guess that's the next couple of years. I'll keep paying the mortgage. That would be a good one for us to keep doing as well. I think one of the things I do want to do this coming year is kind of take stock, because a lot of the stuff, as I said, because I tend to see things that I want to do and try and go after them. Or people suggest things to me that actually we think you'd be helpful, and that's that I really value people who turn around and say, well, actually, could you come and help us do this, or we think you'd be really good doing that. I love taking opportunities and sort of see how that plays out. So I guess this year, like I said, this year could be about taking stock of it and actually working out what I want to be when I grow up, because I haven't quite decided yet.
Thanks for joining us at the Human Factors and Ergonomics Hub, brought to you by the Human Factors and Ergonomics Society of Australia, where human-centred design really matters. If you like this podcast, make us your favourite in your podcast app. We look forward to chatting with you next time.